Section 20. Assembly and exploded view of the bench Vise. 1. Explanation of the exploded view. Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will study assembly and the exploded view of the bench Vise using NX10 software. This lesson aims to deepen your understanding and mastery of assembly skills through practical demonstrations of the assembly process and the creation of exploded views. 2. Task description. This imagery is an isometric view of the already assembled bench Vise. Our first task is to fully assemble the bench Vise. This imagery is an isometric view of the completed exploded view of the bench Vise. Our second task is to generate an exploded view of the assembled bench Vise. 3. Task and main command analysis. The main commands we will use in this lesson include assembly constraint dialog box and contact align constraint, angle constraint, center constraint, concentric constraint, distance constraint, and parallel constraint, as well as exploded view. 4. Command review. 1. Assembly constraints. Assembly constraints establish positional relationships between one component and another or multiple components. This relationship is achieved through one or more mating conditions. Only when constraints between components in assembly are established through these conditions can it be considered a true assembly model. Click the constraint command in component position, and then click the drop-down arrow to see all the constraint types previously introduced. In this lesson, we will use these commands in a practical example to see how to correctly choose the constraint conditions. 2. Exploded view. An exploded view is a diagram where the components of an assembly are separated in the same image. This separation allows each component to be observed clearly and reflects the structure of the assembly. In the model, components are offset from their original positions according to the assembly relationships, providing a stability view for users to examine the parts and their interrelationships in the assembly. The exploded view, also known as a three-dimensional assembly diagram, is commonly found in the structure manuals of various everyday products. It illustrates the relationships between different components. Click the Exploded View command, and the system will pop up a dialog box. In this lesson, we will explain the commands in the dialog box using a practical example. 5. Operation steps. Assembly. Next, we will explain the assembly process of the bench Vise. Step 1. Open UGNX10 software. Create a new assembly document. Enter the working environment. Click Add Component. Select the Vise body as the first assembly component, and define the placement position. Then, add constraints to this Vise body. As mentioned before, the first assembly component only needs a fixed constraint. Next, we continue to add the second component. Click Add Component. Select the draw plate. Define the placement position and add constraints. Here, choose Contact Align constraint, and sequentially select the long side of the draw plate and the long side of the Vise body for contact. Then align the top surface of the draw plate with the top surface of the Vise body. This completes the assembly of the draw plate. Next, we continue to add assembly components. Click Add Component, select the screws, define the placement position and add constraints. Here, choose Equal Size constraint. Since the screw head is a conical hole, First, click the conical head of the screw and constrain it to the conical hole of the jaw plate. Then click Confirm to complete. Here are 2 screws in total, so we need to add the screw model twice. Note: for standard models like screws and nuts, you only need to create one, which can be reused during assembly. Next, add the lead screw washer and position it. Open the washer component and choose Concentrate Constraint. First, click the inner edge of the washer hole, and then click the inner edge of the Vise body hole to complete the constraint. Next, add the square nut. Here we need to know that, unlike the previous parts, the square nut is a movable part on this Vise body. So we cannot fully constrain it to any surface. We must retain axial movement. 2 constraints are required here. First, select the face-to-face contact constraint command, and choose the contact surface between the square nut and the Vise body as the constraint object. Then use the whole axis center constraint. This constraint is similar to the concentrate constraint but retains axial movement. Next, add the lead screw. The lead screw model is a cylindrical part, and cylinders generally use concentrate constraint. However, the lead screw in this fixture needs to rotate. So when constraining, we must ensure that the degrees of freedom are not completely restricted. We select the contact constraint twice. First, constrain surface 1 and surface 2, then constrain surface 3 and surface 4. This fixes the lead screw in the hole. This ensures constrained movement in all directions without restricting axial rotation. Next, add the movable jaw. The jaw component moves with the square nut during assembly. When selecting the constraint object, do not choose the Vise body, otherwise it won't move with the square nut. First, select the contact constraint to constrain the border surface of the movable jaw to the square nut. Then constrain the center axis of the jaw to the axis of the square nut. Note that the movable jaw will rotate according to the shape of the workpiece, so an angle constraint must be applied. This completes the constraint for the movable jaw. Next, add the jaw plate and screw positioning. This can be done by repeating step 2 and 3. Use the components to constrain them to the movable jaw. Next, add and position the fixed screw. This part also needs to move up and down. So, add face, contact and align the axis with the hole center to fully constrain the part. Next, add the flat washer and the nut assembly. Since these are cylindrical parts, select concentrate constraint for all of them. 6. Operation steps. Exploded view. Next, we will create the exploded view of the bench Vise. First, create a new exploded view. Then click Auto Exploded Components to perform an initial explosion. Since the effect of the auto explosion is not ideal, we will edit the exploded view and manually position each component. First, move the components connected to the lead screw. Then move the jaw components, the fixed Vise body components, and finally the movable jaw components. As you can see, this order matches our assembly sequence. Here are screenshots of the components moved in each step. After completing the exploded view, click Save Part Model. This completes the entire assembly and generation of the exploded view for the bench Vise. 7. Contact Review. In this lesson, we mainly explain the operations for generating assembly and exploded views through a practical example. Please practice more after class to become proficient in the operation. See you in the next lesson.